You're practically an artifact yourself, Amanda said, laughing too loudly as the younger researchers joined in. Maybe we should tag you and log your bones while we're at it. I didn't respond. I just adjusted my hat against the sun and kept brushing the edge of the trench with the soft tool they'd handed me, pretending I hadn't heard. But I had. Every word. And so had the rest of the team. We were on a dig site in southern Utah, some university-sponsored expedition my daughter was leading. She'd invited me along as a sort of joke, I now realized. It'll be fun, Mom. Educational. Good for you to get out of the house. She said it like I was a dog who hadn't had her walk. Amanda was 45 now, sharp, successful, admired. She carried a clipboard and barked orders to graduate students who scrambled to impress her. Her field was archaeology. Mine had been history, back when I still taught. But those years were long gone, buried under layers of dust just like the fragments we were uncovering. She'd stopped calling me Mom around other people. Now it was always Martha. Martha, don't sit on the samples. Martha, that brush is for delicate work, not scrubbing floors. I didn't say anything. I just smiled the way older women do when they've learned silence makes them less of a target. The sun was brutal by midday. My knees ached. I hadn't slept well in the tent last night. The air mattress sagged, and Amanda's voice still echoed in my head. You belong underground, said with a smirk. It wasn't the first jab, but it was the first one that landed so deep I felt it in my ribs. At lunch, I sat alone on an overturned bucket with a granola bar. The students had gathered near Amanda, laughing about something. She mimicked a creaky voice, my voice, and they doubled over. I used to be her hero. I used to grade papers late into the night while she colored beside me at the kitchen table. When her father died, I held everything together with my bare hands. Amanda was 14 then. She cried for 2 days and then hardened like cement. Now she used that hardness like a scalpel. Mom, she'd said a few days ago, right before the trip, I really wish you wouldn't wear those jeans. They look sad. Just bring something neutral, please. So I packed beige, a palette of invisibility. It suited my new role. Ollie, my grandson, was 16. He'd come along too, though he spent most of his time buried in his phone. He used to hug me like he meant it. Now he barely made eye contact. I'm not sitting with Grandma, he said last night at dinner, when Amanda tried to shuffle chairs around the camp table. She smells like old books. He'd meant it as a joke. I knew that. But no one corrected him. No one told him I used to write lectures with one hand and rock him with the other. I didn't cry. I'm too old to cry over this kind of thing. But I did lie awake that night, staring at the nylon ceiling of the tent, thinking about fossils. How they're buried, ignored, then suddenly unearthed and poked at by people who don't understand what they're looking at. Amanda thinks she knows everything about what's buried. But she doesn't know what I've buried. Not yet. That evening, the wind picked up, kicking dust into everything. The tents, the food, even our teeth. Amanda called it environmental character. I called it grit in my sandwich. After dinner, the group gathered around the campfire like some postcard version of camaraderie. Someone brought out a guitar. Someone else had marshmallows. Amanda sat in the center, laughing, hair pulled into a practical ponytail, wine in hand. She always did know how to command a room. No one asked if I wanted a chair. I found one anyway. One of those low plastic ones that sink in sand and mock your knees on the way down. I sat quietly at the edge of the circle, just outside the light, listening to stories I wasn't part of. Most of them were about fieldwork and academia, conferences, fellowships, a language I used to speak fluently. Now it felt like eavesdropping on a world that had long since closed its gates behind me. Amanda was recounting some mishap in Peru, a dig where one of her grad students fainted from heat exhaustion. The punchline was apparently how she doused him with bottled water instead of helping him up. Everyone roared. I remembered when she used to worry about hurting ants. Ollie sat a little off to the side, flicking through his phone screen like it was more real than the fire in front of him. Once, his eyes caught mine. He didn't smile. "Martha?" Amanda said loudly, interrupting herself mid-story. "Didn't you have some theory about burial rituals in Eastern Europe?" I looked up, surprised. She remembered that. "Yes," I said carefully. "They often used personal items, but not for symbolic reasons, for practical ones. Knives, tools, sometimes even—" Right, she cut in, turning back to the others. "Mom used to have a whole lecture about it. Something about how people used to believe the dead might still be useful." The group laughed politely. The fire popped. I sipped my tea. I didn't bother finishing the sentence. They weren't interested in old lectures from someone who no longer had a podium. When Amanda got up to refill her drink, I took the opportunity to escape. The sand was soft, and I walked slowly, head down, past the tents and into the darkness beyond. I needed air, the kind not thick with smoke or judgment. Behind the ridge was a small rise that overlooked the camp. I climbed it with difficulty and sat down on a flat rock, breathing hard. My hips were furious, my hands dirty, but the silence, the distance, was worth it. From here, the campfire looked like a tiny orange dot, like a signal to someone who wasn't coming. I used to think old age would bring some kind of quiet dignity, that there'd be gratitude, reverence even, for all the years. But no one tells you how invisible you become. You stop being a person and start being a problem to be managed. I watched Amanda move around the fire, gesturing with her wine glass. So sure of herself, so certain she'd built her life with her own 2 hands. She never asks how the mortgage got paid when her father died, or how I stayed afloat after the college downsized me. She doesn't know what it took to keep the lights on during her master's degree, or maybe she does, and just doesn't care. I stayed on that ridge until the fire dimmed and the voices turned to yawns. Then I walked back, slow and careful. My tent was quiet. Amanda's was zipped shut. I crawled into mine and lay there, staring up again at that same thin ceiling of synthetic fabric. Same silence. Same ache in my chest. Tomorrow would be hotter. The schedule said we'd be digging deeper layers. I was already there. I didn't sleep. Not really. Just drifted in and out while the wind scraped at the tent like fingernails on canvas. When dawn finally cracked open the sky, I was already sitting up, pulling on my boots, knees crackling like dry leaves. Outside, the camp was still. A few early risers moved like ghosts, quiet figures brushing teeth at the water tanks, checking gear, sipping coffee. I joined them, silent and unnoticed. I was never a morning person, but age does something to your sleep. It makes it lighter, more fragile, like everything else. The coffee was terrible, instant and bitter, but I held the cup between my palms like something sacred. The warmth helped. Not much, but enough. At the folding table, I caught sight of Ollie. He was sitting cross-legged, earbuds in, nodding to whatever music passed for meaning these days. His face looked blank, indifferent, a wall already half built. I wondered what part of me had disappeared from him. He used to run into my arms when he saw me. Now he didn't even look up. Amanda emerged later, hair already tied, clipboard in hand, eyes scanning everything like she was CEO of the desert. "Morning," she said flatly when she passed me, barely glancing. Not, "Hi, Mom." Not even, "Did you sleep?" Just a word thrown over her shoulder like an obligation. We hiked out to the site in silence. My breath caught more easily now. I pretended it was the altitude. The others joked along the way. Someone brought up a podcast. Another argued over dating methods. I trudged behind them, a figure from another time. At the trench, Amanda handed out assignments. She gave me the same task as yesterday: soft brushing the northwest corner. A safe zone, away from the real work. "Try not to mix the layers," she added, loud enough for everyone to hear. I gave a tight smile. I knew stratigraphy before she knew how to spell it. I knelt. My knees sang their protest. I braced my hand on the edge of the dirt wall and leaned into the slow rhythm of brushing. It was the one part of this whole circus I still found peace in. The repetition. The silence. An hour passed. Maybe 2. I'd found something. A small shard. Nothing impressive. Maybe a fragment of a pot or tool. I held it up gently. Amanda walked by. She didn't even look. Instead, she said to a student, "We have to be careful letting amateurs too close. Some of these older volunteers mean well, but they can contaminate a whole grid." She didn't say my name. She didn't have to. They all looked at me. I set the shard down with more care than necessary. At lunch, I skipped the group table and found shade under the side of the equipment tent. The sandwich was dry. My hands shook when I unwrapped it. That's when I heard Amanda talking behind me, laughing again. "She's harmless," she was saying. "Just, old. Out of touch. She likes being included. Let her feel useful." Let her feel useful. As if I were some dull knife in a drawer. Too sentimental to throw away, too blunt to use. The words struck deeper than they should have. But they weren't new. They were just louder than before. I used to believe Amanda's coldness was a phase. A personality shaped by grief, by pressure, by expectation. But it wasn't a phase. It was a choice. She'd chosen to forget who I was, and I had let her. Until now. That night, back in my tent, I didn't cry. I opened my notebook instead, the one I'd brought to record impressions from the dig. I tore out the first page and began to make a list. A very quiet, very serious list. Call attorney when back in town. Visit bank. Ask about account authorizations. Review will. Remove Amanda's name. Add Oliver? Maybe. Depending. The pen scratched calmly. No anger, no shaking, just clarity. In the silence, I could almost hear my late husband's voice, dry and amused. "Took you long enough, Mar." Yes, it did. But I was awake now, fully. And the next day, I would leave. I didn't say goodbye. At sunrise, I packed my things, which didn't take long. The cot rolled up tight, the blanket folded, the old canvas bag zipped with quiet precision. No one noticed, or if they did, they didn't say anything. Amanda was still asleep, or pretending to be. Her tent was zipped shut, her clipboard leaning beside it like a badge she never removed. Ollie was nowhere in sight, probably charging his phone in the supply van, or maybe still in his sleeping bag, cocooned in indifference. I left a note on the card table, wedged under the half-empty coffee pot. "I've decided to head home. The air here doesn't agree with me. Thanks for the invitation. M." It was dry, polite, not a single drop of blood on it. The truck that had brought us from the town was returning with one of the researchers who'd caught a stomach bug. I asked the driver if he minded an extra passenger. He shrugged. I climbed in. Nobody stopped me. The road back to town was narrow and sun-bleached. The cliffs rose like sleeping giants around us, ancient and silent. It was the first time in days that I felt I could breathe. Not well, but honestly. At the airport, I bought the earliest ticket I could find. No checked bag, no delay. The flight was full of strangers. That was a relief. No one knew me. No one expected me to smile through another insult. When I landed, I didn't go straight home. I went to the bank. The woman at the counter looked young enough to be Amanda's student. Polished nails, tired eyes. She smiled, professionally. "How can I help you today?" "I need to update some authorizations," I said. She clicked through her screen, pulling up my account. I saw her expression change, subtly, when she saw the numbers. Respect now. The kind you only get when you're old and holding something they want. "Of course, Ms. Kenner," she said. "Who would you like to remove?" "My daughter, Amanda Kenner. She has power of attorney and secondary access. I'd like that revoked." She didn't blink, just nodded. "And will you be naming a new secondary?" "Not today." We went through the forms. I signed carefully. My handwriting wasn't what it used to be, but my hand didn't shake. Not once. When it was done, she printed confirmation. "Is there anything else?" "Yes," I said. "I'd like to schedule an appointment with the estate department." She raised her eyebrows slightly. "To make a change to your will?" "To review its accuracy," I said, smiling. "Some names may have been included in error." She handed me a card. I took it, walked out into the sunlight. The air felt cooler now, sharper. At home, the house greeted me like an old friend. Still, familiar, full of quiet. The plants had wilted slightly, but nothing was dead. I turned the kettle on, sat down at the kitchen table, and exhaled for the first time in days. I should have been sad, I suppose. Should have cried. But all I felt was clarity, cold, clean, welcome. Later that afternoon, my phone rang. Amanda. I didn't answer. It rang again. Voicemail. Then Ollie. I hesitated, but didn't pick up. Not yet. Let them stew in the silence for once. Let them wonder. I opened the file cabinet and pulled out the folder labeled Estate. Inside, the old will. Amanda's name circled in blue ink. Beneficiary, executor, trusted daughter. I laughed, out loud. It was a short, bitter sound. Then I took out a pen, drew a line through her name, once, then twice. In the living room, the afternoon sun spilled through the curtains, lit the floor like a path forward. No map, no trail markers, just steps, one at a time. Tomorrow I'd see my lawyer. Tonight I'd sleep. And not one single fossil in my house would be older than me, or more disrespected. The next morning, I dressed with more care than usual. Not because of the lawyer. He'd known me since Amanda was in braces. But because there's a dignity in showing up for yourself. And I hadn't done that in a long time. I chose a charcoal gray blouse and my dark slacks. Brushed my hair back into a low twist. Pearl earrings. Nothing flashy, just deliberate. It wasn't about looking good. It was about not looking erased. The law office hadn't changed in years. Same green carpet, same ticking clock, same framed diplomas on the wall. Marcus Barrage, my attorney, stood when I walked in. "Martha," he said, extending his hand. "It's good to see you. You look—" He paused, searching. "Decided," I offered. He chuckled. "That's the word." We sat. I handed him my old will. The folder had creases now, softened edges from years of being untouched. I need to make some changes, I said. He opened the file, nodded. Let's go through it. We started from the top. I crossed Amanda off every line. Executor, medical proxy, primary beneficiary. Gone. Marcus didn't ask why. He knew better. He'd seen families eat each other alive in his office too many times. Do you want to add anyone else? He asked, glancing at me over his glasses. I'm thinking about my grandson, Oliver. But not yet. Not until I'm sure he deserves it. He raised an eyebrow. Harsh. Accurate, I replied. Instead, I told him to establish a trust, not just a will, something protected, something that would take time and care to unlock. And in the meantime, he asked. In the meantime, I said, it sits, growing, like I did once. We worked through the paperwork. It took an hour. When we were done, he reached across the table and tapped the final document. This changes a lot, he said gently. I hope so. When I got home, there were 5 new voicemails. 3 from Amanda, 2 from Oliver. I didn't listen. Not yet. Instead, I made tea, sat in the chair by the window, and waited. I didn't wait long. That evening, just after sunset, a car pulled up outside. My porch light caught the shape of it. Amanda's silver SUV. She used to be proud of that car, said it looked expensive without trying too hard. Everything she did was like that. I didn't move. She rang the bell twice, then knocked. Finally, her voice, muffled, controlled. Mom, it's Amanda. Can we talk? I opened the door but didn't step aside. She looked tired, hair messy. No clipboard this time. Hi, she said. Hello? We stood in silence. She glanced behind me, as if expecting a warmer welcome. I saw you left the dig early. I did. Why? The air didn't agree with me, I said. Too much dust. She looked down, shifted her weight. Look, if this is about the jokes, it's not about the jokes, I said. It's about how long they've gone unchecked. Amanda swallowed, hard. I didn't mean anything by it. You know how I am. I used to, I said quietly. More silence. Then she tried to smile. Ollie feels bad, you know. He didn't mean what he said. I'm sure, I replied. But I didn't hear a correction, not from him, not from you. Amanda exhaled sharply, irritation rising. There she was. The version of her I knew best. The one who believed emotion was weakness and accountability a threat. You're being unfair, she said. No, I said calmly. I'm being late. She stared at me. I've allowed this for too long, Amanda. The condescension, the jokes, the way you treat me like an old purse you bring out when it suits you, then stash away when it doesn't. That's not true. It is, I said. You think because I'm older, I'm supposed to be grateful just to be included. You think silence equals forgiveness. She opened her mouth, closed it. Finally, I stepped aside. If you want to come in, but not to apologize. That time has passed. Amanda hesitated, then stepped back. No, I think I've said enough. For once, I murmured. She got into the car without another word. Drove off. I didn't watch her go. Instead, I sat down at the kitchen table, opened a new notebook, and wrote across the top. This is not the end. It's the beginning of me. The next morning, I woke before the sun. Not from worry, for once, but from a quiet sense of purpose. The house was still. I boiled water, made coffee the old way, in the pot with the spout that Amanda once said looked embarrassingly outdated. I liked the slowness of it, the waiting. It reminded me that time, when used right, can be a form of resistance. After breakfast, I pulled out the small lockbox from the hallway closet. Inside were old tax papers, Derek's death certificate, my university retirement documents, and, folded neatly, a stack of checks written over the last 10 years. To Amanda, for Oliver's summer camps, private tutors, orthodontist bills, first car, broken phone, lost deposit, thousands, tens of thousands. Some never cashed, most never acknowledged. I'd kept them, not because I needed proof, but because I'd wanted to remember why I said yes. Each one had been a gesture of love, not obligation. But love should be mutual. And silent giving has its limits. I put the checks in an envelope and wrote on it in bold black pen. For your records. Keep or burn. I no longer carry it. I set it aside for the next time Amanda came around, if she ever did. Around noon, the phone rang. Not Amanda this time. "Ollie," I said, surprised when I saw the screen. I let it ring once more before answering. I wasn't rushing anymore. "Hi, Grandma." His voice was quiet, almost childlike again. "Hello, Oliver." There was a pause. Then, "Are you mad at me?" I looked out the window. A squirrel darted across the fence. The leaves had started to brown at the edges, summer slipping toward fall. "No," I said finally. "Not mad. Just clearer." He said nothing. "I've been thinking about the things you said at the dig. That was just joking. I didn't mean it like that." "I know," I said. "That's what makes it worse." He went quiet. "Grandma," he said, "Mom's been freaking out about you changing things. She said you took her off." Stuff. I smiled faintly. So Amanda had started to feel the walls shift. "I did," I said. "I've changed a lot. But why? I mean, we're family." I almost laughed, but not unkindly. "Family," I repeated. "That word only means something when people act like it." He was quiet again. Then, a softer voice. "Do I still matter?" That question, that heartbreakingly small question, the one Amanda never thought to ask. I exhaled. "That depends, Ollie." "On what?" "On what you do next." He didn't answer. Maybe he didn't know how. Maybe he didn't like the taste of responsibility in his mouth. "Tell me something," I said. "If I'd never given another dime, if I'd never paid for a single thing, would you still have come to visit?" He didn't answer. I waited. Then I said gently, "I love you. I always will. But that doesn't mean I'll fund your silence." He whispered, "Okay." We hung up. I didn't cry. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt aligned. Later, I went for a walk, just around the neighborhood, past the hydrangeas that Mrs. Avery always trims too square, past the little library box where someone keeps sneaking in romance novels with missing covers. This was my world. Quiet, ordinary, mine. Not some dig site in the desert. Not a place where I had to ask permission to exist. When I returned home, there was a voicemail. Amanda again. "I hope you're happy," she said, clipped. "Oliver's upset. I hope that was worth it to you." I deleted it, without listening to the rest. In the evening, I opened my window and let the night air in. It smelled like dry leaves and cooling soil. The kind of smell that says, something is ending, but something is also beginning. I sat in my chair with a blanket over my knees and closed my eyes. Not tired, just awake. The next day, I went back to the bank. Not to revoke anything that had already been done. I was there to open something new, a trust. The woman at the desk, not the same one as before, looked up as I approached. She had a kind smile and a sharper mind. I liked that combination. "Mrs. Kenner," she said, "how can we assist you today?" "I'd like to open a living trust," I said. "Irrevocable, with specific stipulations." She nodded and gestured for me to sit. "Do you have a beneficiary in mind?" I hesitated, then pulled a slip of paper from my purse. "This name, Oliver Kenner, my grandson. But I want it conditional." Her eyebrows rose slightly. "Conditional how?" I leaned forward. "I'd rehearsed this on the walk over. I want the funds locked until he turns 25. No early withdrawals. No exceptions unless it's medical or educational. And I want quarterly check-ins with a financial advisor. Someone neutral, not family, not influenced. If he doesn't show up, the trust pauses. If he drops off completely, the trust dissolves." She nodded slowly, taking notes. "That's very specific." "It has to be," I said. "I've watched money warp people who were already leaning." She didn't argue. She'd probably seen worse. We went through the paperwork line by line. I initialed every page, read every paragraph. Amanda would have skimmed, called it tedious. I found it grounding. By the time we finished, the trust was established, funded, locked. "Anything else?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "I want this noted in my file. No authorizations or inquiries from Amanda Kenner are to be honored. Ever." Her lips pressed together in a small, professional line. "Understood." I left the bank feeling lighter, not giddy, just clear. At home, I made a small note in my planner. Trust. Done. Now I can rest. It wasn't about revenge. If it were, I'd have cut everyone off entirely. It was about fairness, about legacy, about not letting guilt write the final draft of my life. Later that afternoon, I opened a drawer I hadn't touched in years. Inside, letters from Derek. Old birthday cards from Amanda, back when she still used crayons. A photo of Oliver at 3, in a superhero cape, grinning so hard he looked like he might burst. I kept the photo. Put the rest away. Around 6, the phone rang again. "Amanda." I didn't answer. Then, a text. "You're really doing this? Cutting me out? After everything?" I stared at it for a long time, then typed, "You made that decision long before I did. I'm just signing the paperwork." No reply. I didn't expect one. That evening, I pulled a book from the shelf. An old favorite. One I used to assign in my classes, The Power of the Absent Voice. It was about women erased from history by husbands, fathers, sons. I'd always loved that title. Now I understood it better than ever. As I read, I thought of Amanda, pacing in her kitchen, furious not because of what I'd done, but because I'd done it without permission. She was learning something I had learned long ago. Silence is not submission, and age is not weakness. It is memory, and mine is long. The house was quiet that evening, but not lonely. There's a difference. Loneliness feels like absence. What I felt was presence, of memory, of intention, of a self I'd misplaced for years and was finally welcoming back. After dinner, I sat at the table and wrote 2 letters. The first was to Amanda. It wasn't cruel. I didn't see the point. She'd spent enough years misunderstanding the line between honesty and punishment. I wrote, "Amanda, this is not about anger. It's about boundaries. Something you've always respected in your work, but never in your family. I've spent years offering love in ways you could measure. Checks, favors, silence. I now understand that love without dignity is just dependence, and I've chosen to end that cycle. You are my daughter. I will always wish you well, but I no longer owe you a version of myself that allows you to sleep at night. Martha." I didn't sign Mom, not out of spite, but because this letter wasn't from a mother trying to be forgiven. It was from a woman reclaiming her voice. The second letter was for Oliver. Oliver, you asked if you still mattered. The answer is yes. Enough that I've decided to give you a chance to become someone I can trust again. I've set up a trust in your name. You won't be able to touch it right away, and you'll have to prove in time that you can handle both money and meaning. If you choose not to, that's your right, and your loss. This isn't a test, it's a mirror. Look into it carefully. Grandma, I sealed both letters, addressed them, and placed them by the door. If Amanda came by again, I'd hand hers to her. If not, I'd mail it in a week. As for Oliver, I wasn't sure if I'd send his yet. Part of me wanted to wait. Let time settle the dust. The next morning, I went to the bookstore. Yes, a physical bookstore. The kind Amanda once called charming in a sad way. I browsed slowly, enjoying the weight of pages, the hush of reverence that good places carry. I bought 2 novels, a small journal, and a guide to estate planning written in plain language. I didn't need the last one. I'd already done the work. But I liked the idea of knowing more than anyone expected me to. On my way out, I saw a woman about my age browsing the mystery shelf. We caught eyes for a second and smiled politely. No words. Just the kind of nod women give each other when they know. At home, there was another voicemail waiting. This one from Amanda, but different. Her voice was lower, slower. I read your letter. I don't know what you expect me to say. Maybe there's nothing I can say. But I didn't know it hurt you like that. I thought, I don't know, that you were used to it, that you didn't notice. I paused the message there. That was the problem, wasn't it? They thought I didn't notice, that my silence was a kind of permission slip. I let the rest play. Oliver's upset, but maybe that's good. Maybe he should be. I'm not good at this, Mom. I wasn't raised to be gentle. You always made things look easy. I guess I relied on that. Then she hung up. No apology. But something close to an attempt at awareness. I didn't return the call. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Sometimes the most generous thing you can do is let someone sit in the space their own behavior created. That evening, I went out to the porch. The light was golden, the kind that flatters even tired faces. I sat with a cup of mint tea and watched the neighborhood carry on. Across the street, a little girl drew on the sidewalk with chalk. Her mother watched from the stoop, sipping something iced, shoes off, eyes soft. The child looked up suddenly and waved to me. I waved back. No clipboard, no lecture, no performance, just a human moment. The next day, I visited Caroline. We hadn't spoken face to face in over a year. Not from distance or anger, but from that strange inertia that creeps in as you get older. You think, I should call her, and then a month passes. 2, a season. But I needed to see someone who knew me before all of this, before Amanda turned into a stranger with my eyes. Caroline had been my neighbor once, years ago. She'd moved 3 towns over after her husband died, into a modest cottage with overgrown roses and a creaky gate that she never bothered to fix. She said the sound reminded her someone was coming. She opened the door before I knocked. "Martha," she said, her voice half surprise, half delight. "You look solid." "I am," I said, "and I need tea." She laughed and stepped aside. Her house smelled like thyme and lemon cleaner. A cat I didn't remember slinked past my ankles and gave me a look of vague disdain. We sat in her kitchen. Same tablecloth as before. Same crack in the teacup she refused to throw out. She poured the tea without asking what kind I wanted, the kind of friendship where choices are understood. "So," she said finally, "what did she do?" I didn't play dumb. I didn't soften the edges. "She humiliated me," I said. "In front of people, in front of Oliver, over and over, and I let it happen." Caroline nodded, slow and unsurprised. "And then?" she asked. "I changed my will." She smiled, not wide, but wide enough. "Good," she said. We sat for a while in the quiet. The kind of quiet that holds space, not tension. Then she said, "You know, I remember when Amanda was 4. She clung to your leg like a barnacle. Couldn't bear to be more than 5 feet away from you." "She grew out of it," I said. "No," Caroline corrected gently. "She grew around it. Different thing entirely." I sipped my tea. "I don't know if I want her back," I admitted. "I mean, if she came tomorrow, apologized, brought flowers, I don't know if I'd say yes." "You don't have to," she said simply. "That's the part they don't tell us. Forgiveness isn't a duty, it's a door. You get to decide when or if it opens." I looked down at my hands. So many years in those lines, so many decisions. "She said she thought I was used to it," I whispered. "The jabs, the silence." "She mistook your strength for permission," Caroline said. "People do that, especially daughters, especially when they want the world to stay centered on them." I nodded. "She's scared," I said. "She's not used to losing control of the story." Caroline smiled again. "Then maybe it's time someone else told it." I looked up at her. Maybe it was. When I left, she walked me to the porch and hugged me tighter than I expected. It wasn't a comfort hug. It was a "you're still here" hug. And I was. Still here. On the drive home, I didn't replay Amanda's voicemail. I didn't wonder what Oliver was thinking. I thought instead about my next step. Not for them. For me. I stopped at a small art store on the way back, one I hadn't visited since Derek passed. I bought a fresh sketchbook, 3 charcoal pencils, and a small set of watercolors. When the clerk rang them up, she said, "Starting something new?" I smiled. "Yes," I said. "Starting something I forgot I loved." Back home, I cleared off the old sewing table in the sunroom, set out the sketch pad, sharpened the pencils. Just seeing them there felt like oxygen. Amanda would have called it sentimental. She didn't understand the power of something made with your hands. Not anymore. That night, I sat by the window, the sketch pad on my lap. I didn't draw anything. Not yet. Just held the pencil. Felt the weight of it. The control. Tomorrow, I'd begin. A woman, kneeling in the dust, not buried, uncovering. The storm came just after midnight. Not the loud kind, not a spectacle of thunder or cracked open sky. Just the heavy, ceaseless kind. A soaking, quiet rain that makes everything seem closer than it is. I lay in bed, listening, my hands folded across my chest like I was preparing for judgment. And then the calls started. First one, then 2, then 5. By morning, I had 12 missed calls. 9 from Amanda, 3 from Oliver, and a string of text messages that ranged from concern to guilt to full-blown outrage. "I'm worried about you. Why aren't you answering? Mom, this is getting out of hand. You've made your point. You've punished us enough. This is cruel. What do you want from me?" It always comes down to that, doesn't it? What do you want from me? As if it's about wants. As if I'm negotiating a favor, not reclaiming ground that was always mine. I didn't reply. Instead, I made breakfast. Not a quick cup of coffee and toast, but a real breakfast. Bacon, eggs, blackberries with sugar. I even took out the good china. The set Amanda once said was too precious to actually use. I ate slowly, watching the rain thicken the world outside my window. The phone rang again. I turned it face down. Somewhere after noon, the doorbell rang. I knew before I opened the door that it would be her. Amanda stood there, hair damp from the rain, coat unbuttoned, phone in her hand like a weapon she hadn't figured out how to use. "Mom," she said, "we need to talk." I didn't step aside. "Have you come to ask questions?" I said calmly. "Or just to make declarations?" She blinked, thrown. I came to make this stop." I looked at her. Really looked. She wasn't furious. Not anymore. She was cornered. She'd built her life on the assumption that I would always be there, silent, supportive, and, most importantly, willing. Now that I wasn't, she didn't know who she was. "Come in," I said, "but wipe your feet." She did. In the kitchen, she stared at the table, then at the dishes, then finally at me. "You're changing everything," she said. "No," I said. "I'm correcting it." She sat, stiff and unsure. "I don't understand what you're trying to prove." "I'm not trying to prove anything," I said. "I'm simply deciding what parts of my life belong to me, and what parts no longer require my funding." She flinched. "So this is about money?" "This is about worth," I said. "Which is not the same thing, though you've confused them for years." Her jaw tightened. "You're acting like I've been some kind of monster." I shook my head. "No," I said. "I'm acting like someone who finally realized that love without limits is just servitude." Amanda looked away. The silence between us swelled, filled with all the things we never said, because politeness demanded we smile through them. Then she asked softly, "So that's it?" "No," I said. "That's the beginning." She looked confused. "I'm not cutting you off," I said. "I'm stepping back. You're still my daughter, but you're not entitled to my obedience or my forgiveness. Those things are earned, and if you want them, truly want them, you'll have to begin again, as if I were someone you were meeting for the first time. Not someone you already think you own." Amanda stood up, pushed the chair back with more force than necessary. "You're being dramatic," she said. "I'm being deliberate," I corrected. She moved toward the door. "Oliver's furious," she said. "He feels abandoned." I raised my eyebrows. "Imagine that." She opened the door but paused. "You'll regret this." "I already regret what I allowed," I said. This is called remembering who I am." And with that, she left. I stood at the window and watched her walk to the car, fumble with the keys, drive off. I didn't feel victorious. I felt clean. Sometimes that's better. Later that evening, I opened my sketchbook for the first time. The pencil felt firm in my hand. I didn't draw Amanda. I didn't draw Oliver. I drew a woman, older, sitting upright in a chair with both hands on the arms. She was looking straight ahead, not smiling, not frowning, just holding her space. I wrote one sentence beneath the drawing. "Some foundations take decades to settle, and some women are the structure." It happened in the pharmacy. I was picking up my prescriptions. Blood pressure, a mild sleep aid, vitamin D, nothing dramatic, just the slow maintenance of an aging body. The woman behind the counter was new, or at least new to me. Young, early 20s maybe, with tired eyes and a mouth that looked like it had to remind itself to smile. She called my name gently, and I stepped up. While she rang me up, she glanced at the name on the bottle. "Kenner?" she said, half to herself. Sorry, you're Oliver's grandma, right? I hesitated. Yes, I said. I was. She looked up sharply, unsure how to respond. I didn't clarify. Let her sit with it. She blushed a little and looked down. I went to school with him, she said quickly. Just a year behind? He used to talk about you all the time. Said you made the best gingerbread cookies in the world. I nodded, still not smiling. He, brought some in once for a class party. Wouldn't share the recipe, she added, trying to recover. Said it was a family secret. That part made me laugh. Just a little. Not because it was funny, but because it was so Oliver, staking claim to something he didn't even know how to make. When the transaction finished, she handed me the small bag of medications, then paused. I hope you don't mind me saying, but... She looked at me like she wasn't sure if she was about to be rude or kind. You seem like someone people underestimate. That's a mistake. I blinked. It wasn't flattery. It wasn't even sympathy. It was something rarer. Observation without agenda. Thank you, I said. That's the first honest compliment I've had in a long time. She smiled then, the real kind, the kind that has no requirement behind it. I walked home in the rain, not hurrying, letting it soak the edges of my coat, the cuffs of my sleeves. It reminded me that I was still part of the world, still touchable, still alive. At home, I dried off, changed into my house dress, and sat in the sunroom again. The sketchbook was waiting. I opened it to the next blank page and wrote, in the corner, "Some truths arrive quietly, like rain on the roof. You only notice them when you stop moving." I stared at the page for a long time, pencil in hand, but didn't draw. Instead, I went to the kitchen and pulled out the old metal tin where I used to keep my cookie cutters. The star, the gingerbread man, the little bell. I hadn't baked since Amanda told me one Christmas, "Just buy them next time, Mom. No one eats them anyway." That had been 5 years ago, and I'd listened. Because that's what I did. But not anymore. I sifted the flour slowly, measured each ingredient by hand. Let the butter soften on the counter. By evening, the house smelled like December, like memory, like the part of me they'd pushed into storage and closed the door on. When the cookies cooled, I placed them gently in a tin. Not for Amanda, not for Oliver, for me. For the woman who used to do everything to make others comfortable. Now I was learning what it meant to offer comfort to myself. I brewed tea, sat at the table, ate one, then two. They tasted just like I remembered. Not perfect, not professional, but wholly mine. The phone buzzed again. Amanda, again. I didn't answer. Not out of cruelty, out of clarity. Later that night, I wrote in my notebook, "Today, a stranger saw me. Not as an obligation, not as a relic, not as background noise to her own life. She saw strength where others saw nuisance. I wonder how many times I failed to see it in myself." Then I added another line, underlined. "Stop explaining your value. Start living it." I closed the notebook and let the quiet settle. Outside, the rain slowed to a whisper. I hadn't opened Derek's box in over a decade. It sat at the back of my closet, tucked behind old coats and an umbrella that had lost its curve. I'd moved it twice when I changed houses, both times carefully, both times with gloves, as if memory could stain. But that morning, I pulled it out. The lid stuck, the way things do when they've waited too long to be seen. When it finally gave, the smell of old paper and time rushed up like a breath held too long. Inside were the pieces of a life, a fountain pen, 2 tie clips, his university badge, a faded photo of Amanda on his shoulders, and letters. Always letters. We'd written to each other for years, even when we lived under the same roof. Not every day, not dramatically, just quietly. Slips of paper left in lunch bags, under pillows, in books. I took out one envelope, already softened at the edges. To M, if I go first. I unfolded it slowly. If you're reading this, I went first, like I said I would. I always figured you'd outlast me. You're tougher, and let's be honest, I eat like a raccoon in a tie. You'll be alone now, and that makes me angry. Not at you, at time. At the math of it. Promise me you'll still be sharp. Still be yourself. Don't shrink to fit anyone's idea of what grief looks like, or what a widow should become. Don't give away your voice in exchange for being tolerated. And Martha? If Amanda forgets who you are, remind her. And if she won't see you, let her miss you. But don't vanish to keep the peace. You've always been the strongest one in the room. Even when the room tried to pretend you weren't there. Keep walking forward. You never needed a map anyway. D. I didn't cry, but I felt the heat rise in my throat, like something too alive to ignore. He knew. Even then, he saw what might happen. The drift, the slow dismissal, the way motherhood turns into background noise if you're not careful. I read it again, then folded it, smooth and precise, and placed it back. That afternoon, I went to the community center. There was a notice I'd seen in the library, a flyer for a small history circle, retired teachers and hobbyists who met every Thursday. I walked in just before it started. The room was small, warm, mismatched chairs around a long table. There were maybe 8 of them, all older than me by a little, some by a lot. A woman with wild gray curls gestured for me to sit. "We're discussing forgotten sites today," she said. I smiled. How fitting. They introduced themselves. Some had taught high school, some at colleges. One had been a museum guide for 30 years. I told them about the dig. Not the Amanda part, just the site. The silence. The soil layers. When I mentioned the fragment I'd found, the one Amanda had ignored, one man leaned forward. "What kind of ceramic?" I told him. He nodded, interested. It was the first time in years someone had taken my words as worth something, without asking my age first. After the session, I lingered a moment. The woman with the curls came over. "You coming back next week?" I nodded. "I think I will." She grinned. "Bring that stubborn daughter if you want. We've seen worse." I laughed. "She's not ready for this crowd." "Shame," she said. "We'd eat her alive." I walked home lighter. It wasn't redemption. It wasn't repair. It was relevance. And after so long being someone's ghost, it felt good to take up space in the world again. That night, I made a pot of stew. The kind Amanda used to complain took too long, too old-fashioned, smelled like a cellar. I let it simmer slowly, the way my mother had taught me, the way time teaches everything worth keeping. I wrote one more line in my notebook before bed. He told me I never needed a map, but I think I just found my trailhead. Amanda showed up 3 days later. No warning, no call. Just the sharp sound of her tires against the gravel and the quick, practiced knock of someone who expects to be let in. I stood at the door for a full minute before opening it. She looked reduced. Not small, not broken. Just stripped of the posture she always wore, that armor of competence, the sharp angles of her voice. This time, she didn't have a clipboard. "Can we talk?" she said. I didn't answer, just moved aside. She stepped in and looked around like it might be the last time. "I read the letter," she said. I nodded. I read it 5 times, she added. Once out loud. I raised an eyebrow. To yourself? She shrugged, uncomfortable. To Oliver, he needed to hear it. I crossed my arms. Did he understand it? I don't know, she said, but I did. And that's why I'm here. We stood in the kitchen, 2 feet between us, but decades of silence stacked in the space. I've been awful, she said. I know that word doesn't even come close. No, I said, calm, but it's a start. She looked at me then, really looked. I didn't mean for it to happen like this, she said. It wasn't deliberate. I just got used to you disappearing into the background. You didn't get used to it, I said. You trained for it. Amanda closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them again. I was angry at you for a long time, for making it look easy when it wasn't, for being so composed when everything fell apart. When Dad died, You wanted me to fall apart too, I said quietly, so you wouldn't have to be the only one who felt it. She nodded. But I couldn't, I said. I had to hold the house, the jobs, the lights. I had to be the scaffolding. And I resented that, she said, because I didn't know how to hold anything myself. We sat. Not like mother and daughter, like 2 women who'd finally stopped lying to each other. I don't expect forgiveness, she said. Not now. Maybe not ever. I'm not a bank, I said. You don't get to withdraw and then ask for credit. She nodded, didn't flinch. But I am still your mother, I added, which means I'm built to hope. Her voice cracked then, just a little. I don't want the money, she said. That's not why I'm here. I know, I said. Because you've already lost it. That landed. I saw it in her face. But I do want you to meet me somewhere, she said. I narrowed my eyes. Not physically, she said. Emotionally. As equals. As 2 women who raised people, who buried men, who lost pieces of themselves in the work of survival. I took a breath, and in that breath, I remembered her as a baby, all gums and fists and heat, the way she used to hold my thumb with everything in her body, as if she knew even then that the world would try to loosen her grip. I'm not the woman you remember, she said, but I'm trying to become someone new. Then we're finally in the same place, I said. We sat there in silence. No promises, no warm endings, just a mutual awareness that we'd both missed things we hadn't known how to name. Amanda stood slowly. I won't push, she said. I won't call every day. I just wanted to say it. In person. I walked her to the door. As she reached for the handle, she paused. Do you want to see Oliver? I don't know, I said honestly. It depends. Is he still repeating you, or is he learning to speak for himself? Amanda gave a short, broken laugh. I guess we'll both find out. She stepped onto the porch. You used to call me Mom, I said. She turned. I still do, she said softly. Just not always out loud. Then she left. I closed the door behind her, not gently, not harshly, just firmly. In the mirror by the hallway, I caught my reflection. Not older, not wiser, just more complete. I went to the sunroom, opened the sketchbook, and turned to a fresh page. I drew 2 hands, one extended, the other not yet reaching, but not closed either. And beneath it, I wrote, Some reconciliations don't arrive. They unfold, like slow light through old glass. A week passed before I heard from Oliver again. This time, it wasn't a call. It was a letter. The envelope was plain, the handwriting careful. Too careful, the kind that comes from someone who doesn't write by hand anymore. My name on the front, spelled right. No Gran or Gma, just Martha. Inside, a single sheet of paper, folded once. No decoration, no mess. Grandma, I don't know how to start this. That probably tells you more than anything I could say. I heard everything. From Mom, and from your silence. And I've been thinking about it a lot. About what you said, or didn't say. About what you changed. The trust. I understand why you did it. I didn't at first. I thought it was punishment. I thought it meant you didn't believe in me. But now I think maybe it means you're giving me a chance to prove who I actually am. Not just who I've been allowed to be. You've always been there. Always. Which meant I never had to ask how or why. I never saw you. Not really. You were the person behind the scenes, making sure the lights worked, the bills were paid, the birthday gifts arrived on time. You weren't invisible. I just didn't look. I want to start looking now, if you'll let me. And not because of the money, because you're the most interesting person in this family, and I've barely scratched the surface. Oliver. I read it twice. Then a third time. I didn't cry. I didn't even smile. But my chest felt full in a way I couldn't explain. Like something had been sitting on my ribs for years, and now, finally, it had shifted. I placed the letter next to Derek's in the box. Not because they belonged together, but because they both saw me. That afternoon, I went for a walk. The air was sharp. The kind of early autumn chill that makes your eyes water a little. The trees were turning at the edges, not full color yet, just a whisper of gold, a warning. I passed a neighbor walking her dog, and she waved. Haven't seen you much this summer. I was away, I said. Good trip? I paused, then nodded. Necessary. Back home, I brewed tea and sat in the sunroom. I didn't open the sketchbook. I just sat, letting myself exist. It's a strange thing, being seen after years of being edited, of having your story told through someone else's version of it. Amanda had done that for years, revised me, footnoted me, polished me down to something palatable. But I wasn't here to be palatable. I was here to be whole. That evening, I baked another batch of gingerbread, just for myself. No audience, no occasion, just the scent of cinnamon, the rhythm of rolling, cutting, placing. And while they cooled, I wrote a card. Not a long letter, not yet. Just a note. Oliver, thank you for your words. The door is open, not wide, not unattended, but open. If you want to know me, come ready to listen and to speak like someone who means it. Bring your own tea. I'm not making it for you. Grandma. I sealed it and placed it by the door. Tomorrow I'd drop it in the post. And after that, I'd keep living. Not waiting, not hoping. Just living. The way I was always meant to. It's been 4 months since I left the dig. The tent dust is long gone from my clothes, though I still find traces of it in odd places. The hem of a sleeve, the corner of a notebook. As if the land itself wanted to cling to me a little longer, even when the people did not. I never went back. Not because I couldn't, because I didn't need to. Amanda called twice in October, once on my birthday, an awkward, too formal message. Then again, near Thanksgiving, asking if I wanted to come down for dinner. I said no, politely, kindly, but firmly. She didn't ask twice. Oliver came by in November. He brought cheap tea, just like I told him to, and sat across from me in the sunroom. He looked older, not in the face, in the eyes. We didn't talk about the will, or the trust, or Amanda. We talked about books, music, the way grief works differently in men, the way he remembered my hands when he was small. You always had the softest knuckles, like paper. It wasn't a repair, it was a beginning. And that's enough for me. We've seen each other 3 times since. No pressure, no performances. Just quiet hours with 2 mugs and some cookies, and the kind of conversation that doesn't need to fill the air. I've started sketching regularly again. Nothing grand, just fragments. The corner of a room, the tilt of someone's shoulders, the texture of rain against a screen. I draw what I notice now. I joined the history group permanently. They asked me to give a small talk last week, just 15 minutes on archaeological ethics. I spoke for 45. No one stopped me. When I finished, the woman with the curls patted my arm and said, "You've got stories, Martha. Don't let anyone keep them." And I won't. Not anymore. I also rewrote my will again, quietly, with intention. Amanda isn't cut off. She's just moved down the list. The executor is someone else now, a woman I trust, a woman who hears me. The trust for Oliver remains intact. But I've added a condition. When he turns 30, he must sit down with me, or with my memory, and write 10 pages about what kind of man he chose to become. It doesn't have to be good. It just has to be honest. I left the rest of the estate to something that matters, a small grant for older women returning to study after 60. It's not much, but it's something. A little wind at the back of someone else climbing out from under years of erasure. Last week, I sat on the porch and watched a girl walk by with a backpack that was too heavy for her spine. She kept adjusting the strap, trying to balance it. She reminded me of Amanda once, before the sharpness, before the cold, before we both became quieter versions of ourselves. And I thought, maybe I'm not finished. Maybe I'm just finally becoming. This isn't a redemption story. I don't need one. I was never lost. I was simply not listened to. Now I speak. Not louder, just without permission. If you're reading this, if someone passed it to you, or if you found it by chance, take this as your sign. It's not too late to step forward. Not too late to take your name out of someone else's mouth and place it back in your own hands. It's not too late to say, I am not the background. I am not the relic. I am the record. And if this story meant something to you, if you saw even a sliver of yourself inside it, share it. Leave a comment. Let someone else know they aren't alone in the quiet undoing of everything they once gave away without asking. We're not fossils. We're foundations. And we're still standing.